Kaya, and welcome to Conversations with the WA Forest Alliance, where we bring you topics and insights into WA's ancient and precious southwest native forests and what puts them at risk and what we're doing about it. We'd like to first acknowledge the Noongar Nations as the sovereign peoples of the lands on which we work and the forests that we defend. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. I'm Shona, and my role in the WA Forest Alliance is to connect people together to take actions for forests. I'd like to introduce Mikey Cernotta from Pemberton Honey Co and Whispering Woods, who joins us today to tell his story about how logging the forests around his farm is having a devastating impact on his business and his family. Thanks for breaking the ice with the first ever of these recorded conversations, Mikey.
No problems. I'm glad that I could be here.
Can you just start by sort of introducing yourself and tell us about your family and your lifestyle in Pemberton?
Yeah, so my name is Mikey Cernotta, obviously. I live on an 80-acre property here in Pemberton with my wife Alexa and two young daughters, Hazel and Zally. We moved here about 5 years ago. And Alexa's a teacher at the local primary school, and I run the farm, wedding venue and beekeeping business alongside her.
So tell us about Whispering Woods. What does it mean and where did it come from and what happens?
Okay, so Whispering Woods is the name of our property, and we gave it that name when we moved here. Since we've been here, we've established a bed and breakfast from a rustic old cabin on the property. We've converted our old barn into a DIY style wedding venue, and also we use Whispering Woods as the base for our Pemberton Honey Company.
So yeah, tell us about the honey company. How big is it and how long's it been going for and who are your customers?
Yeah, so we're relatively new to the commercial beekeeping game. We were always hobbyists, beekeepers. We established Pemberton Honey Company around about 2 years ago. We're a commercial operation running about 200 hives. We're migratory beekeepers, so we chase nectar flows all over the state, from as far south as Hopeton, all the way up to Perth, and then back down to Pemberton. That sort of entire triangle is what we'll work. We package and produce our own honey predominantly into the Great Southern and Southern Forest regions. But it's probably our main enterprise, I guess.
Wow, that's a big enterprise. And with the wedding business and a family, that's massive undertaking. So can you just tell us a little bit about the forest in your area? And what the forest is like down there in Whispering Woods near Pemberton.
Yeah, so we're right in the heart of Karri country, as you can probably see by some of these photos. Around our property is predominantly regrowth Karri. It's around about 80 to 90 years of age. We have a mixture of sort of marry through that forest, but predominantly it's Karri. A huge resource, obviously, for beekeeping and a draw card for our other businesses.
So tell us about how many hectares are up for logging in the next year.
Yeah, so immediately, I guess at the moment we're facing clear fell logging of about 115 hectares of Karri forest. That's due to take place weather dependent within 2020, and is obviously an immediate challenge for us as it's along the direct access routes to our farm for our cabin and wedding guests.
Yeah, so that's the first thing that they see when they rock up to Whispering Woods is, that's the drive in. So,
exactly.
Yeah,
it's a huge loss for us. So
how long since that area of it's Treenbrook, known as Treenbrook, how long since it was last logged?
So yeah, like I said, it's 80 to 90 years regrowth. So 1927 to 1938, I believe, was when they logged it back in the early 1900s. So it's 90 years into, I guess, regeneration and restoration, and potentially going to be clear felled again to have to start from back at square one. And
so then some people would ask, why is it important to protect what's considered as regrowth?
Yeah, I mean, we're coming from a perspective that clearly it's going to have a devastating impact on three businesses that are based locally, employ local people, and bring opportunity to others within our community. These forests, regrowth or old growth, I find is irrelevant because the resource is immense in the draw that it has for tourism. Obviously, there's a huge resource there for us as beekeepers as well. So the fact that it's regrowth to me is not relevant. You know, it's the fact that it's a sustainable forest, healthy, thriving ecosystem that really should be looked after.
Yeah, you put that really well. And when I was talking to you earlier, you said, you know, we used to pump raw sewage into our oceans and put lead in our petrol, but we realised that this was a far greater cost and benefit, and the same principle applies to regrowth. You know, it's 80 or 90 years into returning the forest back to original, and so why would we cut them down again? They're just kind of starting to come back into their own. So how is the forest environment sort of essential for Whispering Woods, and why would it, you know, lose your impact? We talked about the kind of the drive in and, you know, the ambience there, but how else does it impact the you know, the farm and the cabin and the wedding business?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely an experience-based accommodation provider, and our venue is very much based around providing that forest escape. A lot of our clientele visit from Perth, so, you know, they're after escape from the busy city life, and that forest is absolutely integral to the survival of those businesses. And that goes not just for us, but a lot of the other smaller accommodation providers in our region. Our major draw card to here is the forest that we have and how that complements things like our, you know, agriculture and you know, agro-tourism sort of industries, which are absolutely booming down here.
Yeah, I mean, the whole region is called the Southern Forest Region for a reason, right? And there's a whole bunch of branding and marketing that's coming up around that. Around the food, wine, accommodation, tourism industry. It's vitally important, and I mean, that's all lost if it's just a bunch of clearfell blocks. So can you tell us about the honey business now? So what sort of impacts logging will have on honey production?
Yeah, so to put it into perspective for you, in the 5 years that we've been here, within a 5 kilometre radius, we've probably lost, at my estimate, sort of between 800 to 1,000 hectares of carry forest already.
Oh gosh, yeah.
This 115, although that's not a big number in the scheme of things, for commercial beekeepers, these forests, even though they're replanted, it takes 40 years for these trees to reach a maturity level that they can produce commercial quantities of honey again. So we're looking at massive losses as in honey production straight from our back doorstep. You know, and that's on top of what we've already lost in the last 5 years. And that's not just within our immediate area. This sort of clearfell logging happens throughout our region. And yes, like I said, they're replanted, but we cannot use that resource. We cannot maximise that resource for 40 years.
40 years it takes for a carry tree to get to, you know, nectar producing capacity for a commercial operator, hey, for beekeeping, yeah?
Yeah, certainly. And look, that's evidence that comes from beekeepers far more experienced than myself, who've been in the industry for sort of 50, 60 years. So I take their word. These are the guys that have been working these forests for a hell of a lot longer than I have, and their understanding of it is almost second to none.
Mm. So what about the other intrinsic values of the forest to you and your family outside how important it is for your business? Tell us about that, like why you're living down there.
Yeah, I mean the forest is what brought us down here. We wouldn't have established what we have. We wouldn't be a local employer. We wouldn't be supporting other local businesses if it weren't for these forests. I remember very vividly when we first moved down here and the drive along Green Road, which is our road here in Pemberton, and it was a rather warm day in January. And as soon as we got into the forest, the very forest that's due for clear felling, you know, the temperature dropped. There was that nice smell of damp earth, like you would expect from a healthy forest. My wife and daughters walk along the very route that's due to be clear-felled on a very, very regular basis. That's their you know, sort of mother and daughter time. You know, it's a huge mental and psychological a benefit for us being down here and being in amongst these forests.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does something for the whole psyche, doesn't it? It helps you relax.
Yeah.
Think clearer. So have you got an estimation of how much financial loss you might experience if this particular forest block was logged?
Yeah, I mean, I'm using a lot of historical evidence-based sort of calculation when we do this. This particular patch of forest that's due to be clear-felled, we're facing the loss of 115 hectares this year, but there's also a 3-year plan to log the rest of it that would be left. So we're looking at potentially sort of 300 to 400 hectares in total. This carry forest to us, we estimate that at about $1 million worth of lost honey production over the next 40 years.
Wow.
And that's a conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a small and local business, that's massive. That's a conservative figure. I mean, I've spoken with a farm owner who butts onto this property as well. He's in his 90s, and he's told me that there was a commercial beekeeper that accessed this very patch of bush, I guess back in the 60s, and was running up to 800 hives for a full year on his farm. You know, we're only running 200, so the loss of resource is almost immeasurable, but to us and what we will lose from that, from what we could produce, we're looking at about $1 million in lost honey production.
Wow. So what other kinds of impacts will this, logging of the forest around your home have on you and your family?
Yeah, I mean, the immediate effects are business related. We've obviously, with an accommodation and wedding venue, we've not been able to take in any business during the COVID-19 pandemic. The likelihood of logging operations commencing are sort of lining up with when we're estimated to see regional travel restrictions lifted and whatnot. So we've been dealt a blow already, and this is only going to sort of compound that. And then the impact is not just whilst they're logging; it's for the decades after that. We're driving into our property and we're looking at a very barren landscape, and what that does to you, I guess, mentally, emotionally, and all that sort of stuff is it's devastating.
Yeah, and also, you were telling me the story earlier about, having to, rally around support for this particular forest block and for your business, and that's, campaigning like that is really stressful on family life. So you've tried contacting the Minister for Forestry. What was the result?
Yeah, so I mean, it was a very long time from when we sent our original letter to when we received the response. We're looking at 8 weeks. And essentially, the response was, well, you need to sort of talk with your local FPC manager. There was an email given for us to chase that up, and that's essentially what we've done. We're just trying to sort of follow what the advice is from the minister.
Yeah. And so when you contacted FPC, what happened there?
Well, that's where the merry-go-round started, Shona. Originally, we had meetings with FPC in person, and we were told by FPC that their hands were tied. They're just doing their job. It's up to the minister to make that call. That then led to the letter to the minister, and then now we're going back to FPC again on the minister's advice. So wondering who's going to be the one to make the decision.
Wow. And so I've noticed that the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions have these rolling 3-year harvest plans as well. And, it's right now that it's up for renewal, that 3-year plan. It finishes this year. So it seems like the time is ripe for us to really build this case and contact DBCA and let them know that in their 3-year harvest plan, they've got to put an end to this logging of native forests. I mean, that's going to be a hard one to push, but the time's right for it. And yeah. So what about other Pemberton locals? How do they feel about it? Have they been supportive about it?
Yeah, certainly. We've spoken to a number of other small business owners similar to us, a number of the surrounding residents. There's certainly other people directly impacted by this operation that are I guess campaigning and writing letters and whatnot, like what we are. I believe that there's a fear of retribution. I mean, historically, Pemberton, Manjimup, they're timber towns, and people are scared, I guess, of backlash. And we're small communities, we're really tight knit, so word travels fast. We just need to make it clear that this is not an us or them debate, because we believe that there's a really sustainable and beneficial option on the table that would suit everybody.
So yeah, I know that you support the timber industry and workers and the local people in the area who rely on this industry. So for the regional jobs and the flow-on benefits, can you tell us what do you see as a solution?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. We've got good friends of ours who own a local timber mill. My brother owns his own little business producing high-quality Jarrah slabs for furniture. We completely understand and are very, very mindful that other people's livelihood sort of depends on the timber industry. What we don't agree with is how the timber industry runs at the expense of other operators like us, particularly when there's the Forest for Life proposal which has been put forward, which suits everybody. It provides a sustainable and somewhat guaranteed future path for the timber industry. It grows jobs within the timber industry. And then it allows people like ourselves and like other smaller local businesses not to suffer because the resource that we rely on so much and can, I guess, economically benefit for better, I guess, than the timber industry has proven over the last sort of 20 years, that we are able to sort of continue doing and carry forward our businesses and grow our businesses and our local community.
So you've had a good look at the Forest for Life plan then, and you're impressed with it, and you see it can deliver the benefits for everyone in the industry.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, like I said, I'm very mindful that I don't want this to be at the expense of other people, and that's I guess our key driver is that any solution has to suit everybody. The Forest for Life proposal, I'm all for it. I'm very realistic. I understand that nothing's perfect to begin with, so I would really encourage that if there are people within the timber industry and people who are invested stakeholders, that let's get together and find a solution. Let's not butt heads. Let's acknowledge that there's a real need to reform, I guess, the current timber industry to benefit themselves and guarantee their future. And then the flow-on benefit is that beekeeping industries, tourism industries can also thrive and prosper under the same agreement.
Well, I think I can hear a standing ovation from people who are listening in the background, because that's very well said. Yeah, you've said it really well. It's really time to come together, because it's clearly the industry is not sustainable anymore, even for their own workers. So tell us now, what would you say to people who want to help you in your campaign to save this Treenbrook block and the surrounding forests?
Yeah, I mean, I guess firstly is that, we're dealing with a sensitive issue. So I guess from person to person, I would ask that you really listen to the other side of the argument. Like I said, it's going to be a group effort for us to be able to move forward. People will always have differing and opposing points of view, but it's very important to listen. And then beyond that, just share our petition that we've got running on change.org. Talk to your family, your friends, talk to your local members of parliament. It's about creating awareness and letting people know that there is an option there, and really, I guess, everybody coming together to move the state as a whole forward. That's
great. Awesome. So I'll put this up on our YouTube channel, and I'll put the link to that petition underneath so people can sign that and be in support and stay connected to your campaign through the Whispering Woods social media channels. And the WA Forest Alliance will also be keeping people up to date on where it's at. Thank you so much. And I just want to acknowledge how much pressure you're under at the moment and how difficult it is for you. And we'll rally as much support as we can to try and get those forests off the logging plans to save your business. Really grateful for you to join us today, Mikey. Thanks again, mate.
No worries. Thanks, Shona, and thanks everybody. Stay safe out there, guys.
See ya.